Aaron Wilson, Texas Tech fan, our 365 Sports hat man, tried to get in at the very end of the last segment. Aaron, we will get you on before 4 o'clock. That's a promise from me. But we're about to hear from Kendall Kaut, covers men's basketball, college basketball in general as well. Aaron just said, I'm all fired up on sugary, caffeinated drinks and potato chips. Enjoying the win, as you absolutely should be. We're now joined by Kendall Kaut, Sikkim 365 basketball analyst and a guy that can break down the X's and O's, the trends, and much more. Kendall, how much of last night can be fixed, and was there anything that you saw that might be something that popped its ugly head?
Yeah, always a pleasure to be on with you all, and a great question, I think, to start us off. I think a lot of it can be fixed. I think the concern for Baylor going forward, and what I think a lot of people looking at the forums have kind of wondered, is what does Baylor need to do to get Matt Meyer going offensively? I think that's probably one of the big things that must be addressed and kind of corrected for Baylor to win a national title again. Is
it one of those things where he's done such good work defensively, becoming a player who even plays defense, Kendall, as opposed to, sometimes being an elite defender? Has he forgotten, what brought him there?
I think it's a fair point you brought up there, Paul. For me, I would like to see Matt have the ball in his hands. And excuse me as I'm now coughing, thinking about that terrible loss yesterday. I think Baylor's got to put the ball in Matt's hands a little bit more. I want to see him create a little bit more in the middle of the court, have opportunities to run pick and rolls. Early in that Iowa State game, they gave him that opportunity. He's been so successful that it's just essential to get Matt going. I don't think he's forgotten how to play offensively. I do think he's a better shooter than he's been. But he needs those easy opportunities to create for others and be the player he's capable of being.
Kendall, what did you think of Mark Adams and Tech's game plan going into last night?
Chris, I think Mark Adams is one of the best coaches in the country. I talked to him for a long time at Big 12 Media Days. There were rumors out there about how many people were going to leave Texas Tech if Chris Beard had stayed, what was going on there. He is an absolutely phenomenal coach, had a really good plan about, we're going to put pressure on Baylor. You saw late in the game when Kendall Brown kind of got the ball a little bit open on the perimeter, fell for the old trap against Tech where you see the baseline open, so you can drive and suddenly you're smothered. Kept his guys composed. You talked in the post game about how they're down 15 points, number one team in the country. Pretty easy to kind of quit or think, you know what, we beat Kansas on Saturday. Don't need to get too worked up. That's the kind of ability Mark Adams has, and why I'm a little surprised Texas Tech went with him at 65. Didn't go for a flashy hire after getting left by Chris Beard, but the question you can start wondering in Lubbock is, was Chris Beard getting a little propped up by Mark Adams, because he's looking a lot better than Chris Beard is in Austin.
Yeah, and this doesn't seem to be, just like Baylor has every feeling, or I would think, to bounce back. Of course, Oklahoma State won't be easy. Nothing will be easy. There are no gimmies. We know that, but this appears to be someone like in Texas Tech that this is more than just a 1 or 2 game run for them. This is a team that's going to be in the mix at the end of the year.
Oh, Texas Tech's a really good team, Smokey. I think they have a chance to win the Big 12. I worry a little bit about what their offense is like at their peak, but they have Kevin O'Banner, who was a dominant scorer last season at Oral Roberts, who nearly made the Elite Eight, if not for a rough ending against Arkansas, might have made the Elite Eight, even Baylor, maybe their best run of the season. Adams has these guys playing at such a high level. They don't have a traditional point guard, which might leave you a little bit down about what this team's ceiling is. But if you can beat Kansas without 2 of your best players, and then Kevin McCullough was hobbling up and down that court a little bit last night. You come down from that 15-point deficit against number one Baylor, winners of 21 straight home games. The ceiling is the roof, I think, for Texas Tech potentially, but they got to hit that level offensively. You worry a little bit about them playing great offense for 5 straight games, but I wouldn't be shocked in a pretty wide open season if Tech cuts down the nets.
Kendall, how do they fix particularly Flo Thamba and Jonathan Chama-Chachua, stopping people from getting easy buckets, point-blank shots? That's been happening the last couple of weeks.
It's another great question, Paul. Y'all are doing well today. I now, having said y'all are asking great questions, if y'all have a bad week, I'm going to have to tell y'all. So don't blame me if I come in here one week and I'm like, guys, it's not your best. My voice is not my best today. But I think there is sort of this weird element with Baylor's defense where the style Baylor plays, they take so many charges. They can be frustrating at times to say, Flo, you're 7 feet, just jump up. Or John, you're 6'8" with a 7'4" wingspan, got to jump up. I think Baylor might want to emphasize a little bit more going forward that they want to contest more shots, as opposed to the first mindset will always be taking a charge. The officials seem to be a little bit stricter on what's going to be considered a charge versus a block this season. How close you are to that restricted arc seems to be getting called a block more than a charge this season. So I would like Baylor to go in defensively in one of these games, maybe it's Saturday, and say, you know what, whoa, John, your goal should be to block 2 shots this game. Maybe take one more opportunity to block as opposed to taking charge. I think that mindset shift against an opponent like OK State, still very good, as Smokey mentioned, but a team you can maybe experiment a little bit more with as opposed to later on in the season when you're going to Allen Fieldhouse or playing Tech again in Lubbock.
So, Kendall, I was watching a little bit of the Sikkim 365 post game last night and happened to catch a part where Ashley was talking about Kendall Brown and you know, the high school ranking and the expectations and the NBA future and all of that. But he was talking about, you know, how Kendall probably, you know, needs to get a little bit tougher, realize kind of who he is, especially in games like this. What do you think about, you know, Kendall Brown, how he fits in and what he probably needs to do to possibly emerge more so moving forward?
Kendall Brown is one of the big things. I think Baylor's got to focus on how they can fix sort of where he is, Craig. For me, I think it kind of starts with I would like to see Kendall Brown take 1 3-point attempt a half. Maybe he's not a great shooter. There's a question about how effective he can be, but he passes up these wide open threes, and so teams don't close out as hard on him. And that results in both he doesn't take these shots where I think he's pretty open, and we saw earlier this season. He can make open shots. Even when he misses, the ball looks pretty good coming off of his hand. And it will cause teams to be closer to him, so the offense opens up for Matt and some other guys. And it'll open up more for him so we can get those alley-oops he was so successful on earlier this season. So even if Kendall's not shooting well from 3, I think he's got to take these opportunities. And if he passes them up like he did last night against Tech, that's where he gets himself in some trouble.
Have teams now seen what Jonathan Tchamwa can do out front with his length and his size, which is a problem, with the way Baylor runs their defense, and found a way to use that to their advantage?
I think teams are adjusting pretty effectively, Smokey. I think teams are trying to get the ball inside a little bit more with how much Baylor will switch actions. Baylor's not going to be quite as dominant up front this season, obviously, with Davion Mitchell gone. And then last night, it really hurt to not have Jeremy Sohan. I think he's playing himself into the first round of the NBA draft next season. If you kind of just focus on Sohan in one of the next games and kind of challenge Baylor fans to do that when he's back and healthy, he is so good at just locking people down at the wing where they can't get around him. So help is not necessary. So I think his loss really impacted Baylor. And you can say, well, this is still a really good team, 7 high-quality players. And I thought Dale Bonner played a pretty good game last night. But to lose a first-round NBA talent like that changed the whole trajectory of Baylor. Still credit Tech for the win. But he's a huge missing piece. And I think when he gets back, the pressure he can apply and how those switches become tougher means that what John can do so effectively becomes easier, knowing he's got Jeremy on the backside.
Kendall, last year, I mean, they were littered with veterans, Mark Vital, Davion Mitchell, amongst many others. Who do you think is the guy on this team that's going to be the one in the locker room after their first loss in forever that is the one that kind of gets them over that small hump? Who's the guy that's going to, you know, bark a little bit and get them back, you know, as soon as this upcoming game against Oklahoma State? Do they have that guy?
That's a fair question about them. And I kind of asked in the offseason, I was like, you know, last year's team, you had Mark Vital, who we all love Mark. But Mark's a little bit different of a cat to kind of say something there. And Mark can get kind of upset. He can get passive-aggressive. He can get outright angry. I think every team kind of needs a Mark Vital. And I sort of wondered, did this squad have that guy? James Akinjo, not afraid to talk to guys. In the offseason, Adam Flagler told me that James just told Matt straight up, stop clapping. That annoys me. You're not getting past the ball. And Matt's been better about not clapping this season. But you talk to James, and James is a really smart guy, but he's kind of a quiet talker. To use, or a low talker, to borrow the old parlance from Seinfeld on that front. So I don't know, you know, Adam Flagler, I don't know if he's a guy that's going to get in your face or shout at you. So I don't know who that guy is, but they need to find somebody that can kind of say, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what we need to do better. I think it could be John. I think it could be by committee, but I don't think they sort of have that voice like Mark could be last season. But at the same time, I mean, Davion and Jared weren't really in-your-face guys last year, but last year's team didn't lose till COVID. This year's team has a much smaller margin for error.
So, all right, Oklahoma State is next. Obviously, they have to bounce back. The schedule doesn't stop. The calendar just flips to the next one. It's either Monday, Tuesday, or it's a Friday or whatever, not Friday, but Saturday. Oklahoma State, your thoughts about that matchup?
They've been one of the most disappointing teams in the country to begin the year, but you look analytically, they still rank top 50 on KenPom. I thought this was going to be a lot better team. I talked to Ice Likely for a minute at Big 12 Media Days. He thought they were a really good team, would play effectively. They have Bryce Thompson, who had transferred from KU after being a 5-star guard who had previously played, or his father previously played under Bill Self at Tulsa. So the thought was he'd be pretty effective, but he's not even shooting 30% from 3 this season. I watched a lot of him in that KU game. Takes really bad shots. They have a lot of talent. It's one of those teams that I think probably will go like 4-14 in the Big 12 or 5-13, but they'll knock off somebody you don't expect. They're capable of beating Baylor. They played KU pretty close for a while, but this is a team you got to beat if you're Baylor in a bounce back game, and might be the worst team in the Big 12, though K-State and TCU will have an argument at that front.
So who's the villain? So they need a villain. They need somebody to stand up and say, hey, we're done with this. And that'll be interesting to watch because they're also pretty good dudes, you know. But Mark Vidal was the poster child for being the villain, and I think the physicality of him and how he played as well, how hard he played. Thank you, Kendall. Appreciate your time. Kendall Kaut will join us throughout the season, along with others that cover Baylor men's basketball on 365 Sports and also Sikkim 365 Radio. We will have former Baylor safety J.T. Woods